All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of the Coach's Compass. And remember, it is season number 2. Again, don't know what episode we are on. We just continue to roll, continue to bring on cool guests from all across the world. Remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below. It's your boy, Coach Coop. Coach Jay can't be with us tonight because unfortunately he's still trying to figure out that time change with him being all the way in Hungary. And he's also got to work a full-time job and now going into retirement, so he's figuring out things. But tonight, we've got a very cool guest with us. We got Coach Tim. Most importantly, he is a father, husband, strength coach. He is the co-founder of Allegiant Gym, creator of Performance Health Podcast. Coach Tim, thank you and welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Coach, like a lot of us that are getting into this strength and conditioning world and trying to figure out and navigate the whole path, you are one of the ones that have kind of figured out the way and started their own thing, but now also run their own podcast. What made you want to start Performance Health Podcast?
So I guess probably the biggest thing, it's demand. During COVID, we had to shut down our doors and just started reaching out to every strength coach I probably knew and asked them if they'd be willing to contribute anything in exchange for a consult. We were able to make payroll for 2 months, really. So we're pretty fired up on that. And it's dawned on me in that moment that we have a pretty high demand, or I had a pretty high demand for coaches wanting to hear me talk and what my take is on stuff. So that was a genesis. Like, all right, how do I create some sort of medium to voice my opinion, put my thoughts out there to the world? It's always been a work in progress. I've been running that podcast for 3 years now. And the biggest thing I've learned on it is this thing of like, find your voice and be as most authentic to who you are and the audience that you're trying to talk to, and never waver on that. Because at the end of the day, man, like there's an endless amount of things that can kind of create a voice through like ChatGPT or AI. And I find that authenticity and just your personality and charisma is now a more valuable resource than ever. And if I can lean in hard on that and really leverage all of my experiences, the wisdom, the knowledge, just the passion, the interest, and, just inflecting my humor or my sensibilities and my values into what I'm talking about, man, yeah, great. And I have an unfiltered medium where I can really go into whatever direction I want to go to, right? And that's, I think, another element of this, of like, we have different lenses that we need to, convey ourselves through. So if we look at it from, I got to market myself, I got to put a social media, I got to put a brand, I got to do all these things, having a just unadulterated me and my thoughts in that moment, organic, natural, free form. Obviously we're doing legwork and prep work prior to try to put together a compelling, interesting product that people are going to stop and listen to. But the truth is I have a unfiltered, just no like screen or anything I have to really worry about. I can just be as most authentic me. And one thing I've really, really leaned in hard on is this idea that like my experience and my knowledge is gained and earned, not given. And, I can go off the cuff pretty well, and I can talk pretty like high level without much actually prep work in terms of like, oh, give me what questions and I can just go without it. And that's something for me that I'm really trying to lean in on hard, of like not overthink it. So a really good book was If I Understood You, Would I Have This Look on My Face, by Alan Alda. And he talked a lot about this idea that like he's trying to match the level of knowledge of the people that he's interviewing. So like world-class physicists, rocket scientists, medical scientists, everyone out there in the world. And it's like, one thing I never really realized was my job as a interviewer or a host was try to make this understandable and digestible and even actually relatable to the listener and the watcher. And going into it with a little bit less prep work actually behooves you, because you give a more authentic answer. And obviously there's a skill and a thing that you need to develop to be more organic and natural, and I guess improv a little bit more. But that was a pretty good resource for me, because I think all the stuff we're doing for like social media or YouTube or anything from like an advertisement is going to be pretty heavily filtered. So having a little bit more natural free form flow to communicate and talk was something I really wanted to try and do. And, now I've been doing it for 3 years.
How, because I mean, that's awesome to hear, because we're new in the podcast game, right? We're trying to figure out the whole, like, how do we speak? How do we talk? Who are we trying to entertain? Do we filter ourselves? Like, are we allowed to curse, or like all these different things that you're talking about yourself. What was that journey like leading up to this point that you're at now? Especially, when you first started out, I mean, you start in COVID time, so maybe there's a little bit more viewers and people that have more time that you're kind of catching the interest of. But there is that period that we kind of go through that you have that feeling of, am I the knowledge that I'm giving or whatever I'm talking about, is it reaching people that I wanted to reach? And it's not one episode gets more reviews than the other. So how did you navigate through it all?
So I actually have a course. It's called Foundations, and we go through this probably quite a bit. This idea that like the the outcome you're looking for is on the other side of whatever struggle or strain you're going through, like the Seth Godin dip phase. And most people don't realize that that inevitable dip or the hardship is probably that necessary step to get through to an inflection point. But it's just keep your head down and grind. And if you feel like this knowledge is needs to get out there to the world, and you feel like you have a voice that needs to be heard, you got to be willing to do it. And I use a line in the course that like there's a movie called with James Gandolfini, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, and they ask a simple question: like, you love someone, when is enough enough? And Julia Roberts, Hammond and Hawn, and James Gandolfini's character is like, no, stop. It's never enough. Like when you love someone, there's never a point where it's enough. And I think the same thing with something that you're passionate about in your career. Like we all have had to intern, like your partner's in Hungary right now. Like we all have to do things that are like, when you explain to a family member or a friend of, hey, why I'm doing this, it doesn't register, it doesn't resonate, because the end result is what, like a $30,000 a year job in the team sector or doing a podcast with 30 listeners. But the reality is you're not doing it for that. You're doing it because you have to get what you feel and what you think out there to the world, and the people that need to listen to it will hear it. And as you start to push through, putting your value in getting reps, getting experience, articulating yourself, having a platform to do public speaking, like, can you get through a whole podcast without saying and or what are your other filler words? Like, it's just practice and reps, and it's leading to something better. And whatever the original intent behind it was, hey, I wanted to have a bigger reach, or I wanted to put together and consolidate my thoughts and really think about how I'm going to voice what I do to the world. Or maybe I just want to talk to interesting people. Like Robbie Bork has a really good line. He's like, I don't do a podcast because I want to have a high level podcast. I just don't want to pay for consults. And like, to that knowledge, it's like, yeah, that's, if anything, it's worth it for that in itself, right? Because usually, like most high level strength and conditioning coaches will never turn down a opportunity to be on a podcast or have their voice heard, myself included. And I don't really care about how many listens or follows you have. It's just, yeah, get me on there, and it's just exposure, and it's getting a bigger reach, tapping into your audience. We can kind of share together, collaborate. But if I believe in myself and I know what I'm talking about is of value to other people, then I shouldn't have any reservations about pushing through. And the metrics that you get, whether you're going through like a analytics and you're saying, okay, how many downloads, how many listens, what's my good platform, my bad platform, what's the best time to post, what's the best keyword search, like all that stuff is, yeah, it's really important if you want to have a successful podcast and maybe potentially getting some revenue or sponsorship to be able to continue to push through. But on the other end, it's like, what's the real reason why you're doing it? Is to voice who you are and what you can do, and sharing your knowledge and insight. And there's 10 people out there in the world, I guarantee, that would benefit from it. So focus on that and just keep pushing through.
That's what we appreciate, coaches like yourself that come on and just drop a knowledge bomb like that. Saying that, hey, no matter how much knowledge I have, I just want to come on and share it. Whether you got 10 listeners or you got 30,000, like, you're just coming on here to keep it real with us, and you're giving us insights on how to make ourselves better. You're talking about going out there and public speaking. I guess I do it on a daily basis because I do sales and I manage a gym and whatnot, but I'm not going out there and public speaking on a daily basis unless I'm on here speaking to coaches. And like you said, it's I never really got into this. I was just trying to see what the other side of life was like after football. And now being able to talk to coaches that are also in the industry and hearing that they went through the same struggles that we went through when you're first starting out and having that imposter syndrome. What have you seen be in this journey? What have you seen in the industry that has, either with podcast or just even in the gym setting, has helped or hurt coaches? With the podcast scene is there's a lot of knowledge out there to be grabbed, but how you know who you're listening to is actually, worthwhile. And then you look at social media too. You only see snippets of what people are doing, like in the training facilities, in their programs. How do you know what to go through, and what have you seen that's kind of hurt or helped the industry now?
So it goes in both the user and then the practitioner. From the user experience, it's not an information problem, it's a discipline problem. Like, there's no shortage of things to do, and there's no shortage of means to getting it. Where the real issue is usually they fall down to, they lack the the discipline and the fortitude to do it consistently at a high level, or push through to the point where it actually makes a difference. So the discipline is the usual aspect for that. But the other end of it, from the coaches or the practitioner's perspective, it's focusing on the wrong thing that might not necessarily be in line with what your ultimate goal is. And again, going back to my foundations course, the one thing that I really start with young coaches is this idea that you got to be more forthcoming with what you actually want. And my job as a mentor, as a boss, as a leader, as someone who's gone through the ringer of pursuing jobs and been in the private and the public sector, is forcing you to actually commit to something. I think most young strength conditioning coaches, and it's not like a generational thing. I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to get into this like, oh, hey, you're young. This generation doesn't get it. No one gets it in their 20s, but having some sort of commitment and looking at it saying, this is what I want to do right now. And you, spoiler alert, that's going to change in 5 years, just a heads up. But saying, I want to do this, much like making a goal in strength conditioning, right? Most people will gravitate to whatever shiny and new and try to get as much information as possible, but lack actually the commitment to something and won't have the discipline to push through. Same thing for coaches. Like, say what you want, be forthcoming with that, because once you actually say that, then now you have to be held to a standard and accountable to that. And if it's, hey, I want to be a head strength coach in the team sector, you got to be a really good coach. And having a podcast, having a platform doesn't mean anything in regards to that. It really doesn't. Monetizing your platform has no merit or value towards getting a head strength conditioning job in the team sector, because there's not a single head football coach or head basketball coach or any like AD that's concerned about how many followers you have. What they are concerned about is, can you execute in the job they're asking you to do, and your network, your ability, your skill. So if you want to be a team sector head strength conditioning coach, you got to be a really good coach. The other end of it, though, it's this other dynamic. You mentioned imposter syndrome. There's the other end of the imposter syndrome where you actually are a full-on imposter, right? You're just talking in hypotheticals. And I see a lot of influencers without much actual tangible in practice work in talking about hypotheticals or anecdotal. And when we think about the truth of the matter is like, the real ones know peer-to-peer evaluation makes a difference. And we can confuse a couple people on a surface level. If I look really good, if I'm really charismatic, or I'm polarizing, saying things that are very controversial, like creating a common thread or an enemy. But the reality of the situation is good, is undeniable. And if you're a great coach, if you can make differences with your clients and your athletes, you are always of value. And we look at now the future. It's a zero-sum game if we try to compete in this space with a lot more resources or people that are just going to be younger, better looking, with more time to commit to editing and promoting the product. Will never be without a value is this ability to actually connect and change someone's behavior and overall physiology and biomechanics, et cetera. So if we look at it from the context of the influx of information, the availability of information for both the user and the coach, it's zero in on what's actually going to make a difference, is being able to get in front of someone, have a direct impact on that person, and making the changes that they're asking you to make, because that's essentially what you're asked to do. Or looking at it from saying, hey, I really want to be this. I want to be held to the standard. Here's going to be the things or the benchmarks I need to accomplish to getting it. Now I got to go to work. And having a platform, all good. If you can monetize it, great. Do not discourage people from trying to make a side living or doing some extra things that they're passionate about, or just at least having a voice. But confusing that like with actual accomplishment towards a real goal is something I think is often more so now because of just the opportunity cost of it, that you could get something from that versus actually just getting on the floor and being good at coaching, because that's something you could take with you the rest of your life versus your platform. You know, that as you get to a certain threshold, it's like 100,000 followers, 1 million followers, 10 million followers. Like, at what point does it actually become enough? And does that take you away from actually being a good coach?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. When will we know what makes you actually a really good coach, or what stops you from, all these followers and whatnot? When you talk about that, also, how did that affect you when you started your own gym? Because you talked about it a little bit before, like you started your own thing before COVID times, and COVID hit, and you started a podcast platform to be able to bring other coaches on. What was it like before then, starting your own thing, and now you look at the industry now, like you talked about with these newer coaches, that sometimes you got the influencers and all that other stuff, and we don't say it's a generational thing, but what have you seen that's kind of happened with you opening up your own place?
Can you refine the question a little bit? It's kind of hard to follow that.
So with that, I'm asking, how was it at the beginning to start your own gym? Um, and what was the process like? Then you lead into COVID times and you kind of, now you had to hit that pause, but you're talking to other coaches along the line, bringing them onto the podcast and still being able to generate revenue. And then you kind of go now where you're opening things back up, but there's a new wave, not really a new wave, I guess a new style of coaches with the influencers and everything like we talked about with social media, and the podcast lens. How has it been to continue on now that knowing what you know?
I mean, experts don't take their advice from influencers. That just to be real, like they're people who aren't experts take advice from people who are non-experts. Like that's the reality of the situation. So there always will be, then tomorrow there's going to be 10 new people that are significant to a bunch of people who don't know any better, right? That just, it's pointless to get into that like cycle of things. And they're playing to whatever is going to follow or trends are going to be popular, right? They're catering to easy to consume information. It's entertainment, right? If we're looking at it from the context of what really sells in social media, it's going to be entertainment, information, and then some sort of education. Like I think from, or motivation, sorry, the third one there. But like from a like actual brick and mortar physical location, like there's no cheating in it, right? You got to be good.
Yeah.
That the bottom line is like if you're going to open up a physical location or if you're going to train people, you got to focus on being a good coach. And you have a couple different filters you can work through, like your programming, your coaching, your facilities that like I really focus on. That's my job. I'm operations and I want to be best in the world in that. Like I don't want to hem and haw. Like I don't have any reservation saying I'm the best strength conditioning coach in the world because I feel like in my heart, I believe that. And I don't really believe that like I want to like waver from saying I'm the best programmer in the world or I'm the best designing facilities in the world, because the truth is I do believe that. And when I'm trying to talk to a potential customer, like I have that inside of me when I talk to them. And when I'm trying to convince them that they're going to be better served with me than going to a gym down the road, I genuinely believe that. And they might prefer a certain style or a certain approach. The truth is, though, apples to apples, if you actually know what you want and I can deliver that better than someone else, that's going to win, right? Like if a person leaves a gym because they don't like the music, I don't care. Like it just doesn't really make a difference over time. But if they're leaving because their results were so good and they never got hurt, like that to me seems illogical. So if I'm looking at the things that I actually control, it's getting great results and keeping people safe and doing it in a consistent and high level manner and scaling it out to not only me, but multiple coaches and multiple gyms. The proof is there. So when you're like going through the early part is work at it like you know you need to, where I think about my job as thinking I'm the best or promoting a product that is going to bring great value to people and looking at them like I would look at $1 million athlete is there's no difference from this person who has a chance to make $100 million in a contract versus a person that's just trying to get a workout while taking care of 2 kids and having a full-time job and being a good husband or wife. Like there's no difference to me on that. You're going to get the same level of treatment and training and programming in the same facilities that I could for that $100 million athlete. And that dynamic as it plays out. But then as it evolves to like now I got a platform, I got podcasts, I'm doing these things like if anything, it looks at it from I'm catering to 2 different avatars there. Like I would say they're split in regards to I'm compartmentalizing what I do on social media to talk to strength conditioning coaches because that's a audience and that's a tribe, if you will, that I'm connected with. Like that's who I am at my core as I'm a strength conditioning coach. And the coaches that are doing that on a daily basis are the people that I genuinely have as much empathy and compassion for because I know how hard that job is. So I want to connect to them. And when I'm talking to those coaches and when I'm trying to work with them, I want to use podcasting and social media and being a resource for them, or at least an ally in the fight to doing good training. And I know there's always a battle of like, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? Is this person doing this stuff? We have envy and feeling a little bit insecure. Like you're doing as much as you possibly can today. And when I do social media or podcasting or my website or any courses, is talking to that avatar, that strength conditioning coach that's struggling every day to make ends meet and fight like hell to deliver a great level of strength training program or a experience to their clients and athletes versus my gyms. I'm quality control. It's best programming, best facilities, best coaching in the market, bar none. Every day I'm fighting like hell to make sure that those things are executed to high level, and I have a series of checks and balances to make sure that's the case.
I knew after listening to a few of your podcasts early on that you were going to come on here and drop a whole bunch of knowledge for us and a whole bunch of stuff that's going to get me fired up for the rest of the day. You know what I mean? So Coach, like, thank you a lot for like a lot of the stuff that you're saying. Now, I have a question for you that came from one of our guests that was on before. All right. They ask, how much of what you are helping others with are you doing yourself?
Man, I don't ever ask anyone to do anything I wouldn't be willing to do myself. Plus, the other end of it is like, so it's plug. I got a book, and one of the things I tell every single strength coach is no matter where you're at, the beginning, the middle, the end of your journey, you're going to do two things. You're going to read and work out. And if you don't like to read about strength and conditioning, quit. Just quit. It's not for you. This isn't like a half-hearted profession, because it's going to pass you so quickly, and you're going to become disenfranchised by the evolution and the rate of change. We're still a very young profession, and the evolution happens rapidly. Like, we are in a drastically fast-moving, changing industry. And if you don't stay up at times with reading articles and books and going to courses and doing whatever you have to do to stay up to speed, you're going to get passed by. And the other part is working out. That is your respite. That is the thing. That is the one amenity that you will always have. And when you're the benefactor of working in some of the best facilities in the world as a college or professional strength conditioning coach, or you have a facility that you feel like is going to be very accommodating, and if you aren't, find one that is, then you got to work out. Like, I just beyond me strength coaches who don't like to read or work out. Like, it's the only two things that are going to keep you going. It's the only two things that you can look at this from a context of. When you compare yourself to athletic trainers, sports nutritionists, sports psychologists, sport coaches, they don't read and they don't practice what they do. They just don't. And when you look at yourself as a strength conditioning coach, you can beta test every single thing you're asking someone to do to see if it's actually legitimate or going to make a difference, as well as you should feel a little bit of jealousy and envy for how quality of a program that your clients are getting. And I host these training camps every year, where I tell the original message, how you treat your clients and athletes is how I'm going to treat you this week. Like, you are the most important people in front of me. And hopefully I reignite something within that coach that goes, now I remember why I did this in the first place, because this changed me. Like, we are literally in the montage scene of the movie that we love growing up. That is our job. And if we don't look at that and say, I am excited to go work out, I don't give two shits if you worked out, if you trained 10 groups today. You still should get a workout in. Grow up. Like, you did that. You signed up for this. And being busy is a sign that you're good. Don't use that as an excuse to not read or not work out. You can ask my wife. I'm on my couch reading or doing something related to my profession till 10 o'clock at night. Put the kids to bed and I go back downstairs and I do something. I stop. I work out every single day. I can make every excuse in the world why not to. But the truth is like, I use that as my respite and my means to reignite me and realign me. And the coaches that stop doing that, like, quit. Like, because there's so many other things you can make more money at a fraction of the time with a lot less headache. Like, why are you tolerating this stuff? Like, the only reason why I tolerate all the BS and all the lack of job security and poor hours and all the other things that go with it is because I get to work out and I get to read about something that I love. Like, what other profession in the world could do that? And it takes a level of maybe psychosis that you need to, like, pursue this. I was a always below average athlete trying to outwork my competition to get an edge. And that same edge is applied to a strength conditioning coach, trying to be a team sector head strength coach, trying to be a successful business owner. That drive, that motivation, like that's not a part-time thing. That is a full-time, I do this or I don't. And if I don't have a love for reading or improving in some physical or mental way towards my profession, then don't do it. Like, find something else, man. Like, I can have a 9-to-5 job making 6 figures doing a whole lot of other things. I'm pretty smart and pretty capable, but I choose to do this because I love it. I know I'm good at it. And I know this is what I was destined to do. And the message in the book is like, you're always going to have doubts. You're always going to hesitate. You're always going to think about what is the point? Why would I do this? Is because you get the opportunity to do things that you love growing up or you love currently. And if you don't love them anymore, you should probably find something else entirely.
Telling you, Coach, you got me fired up about it. It almost sounds like a pregame speech, like ready to run through a wall right now.
Yeah, I'm good at those. Yeah, I've done a lot of that.
I can see that. Yeah. So, last thing before we get out of here, what is one question you'd like to hear us ask our next guest that comes on? Don't know who the next guest is, but what would you like to hear us ask?
This is like a pay it forward moment, huh? That's a good. Was that the previous one that you got? I was asked.
Yep.
Did they know it was going to be me?
No, they didn't know.
No. Okay. So you just threw a thing out there. Okay. Do you believe what we do matters?
Do you believe what we do matters? Do you?
If I didn't, I wouldn't do it. Like I remember I was a young strength coach. One of it was like an elder statesman, a guy who's just a lifer, and he's like, I was just like you. I thought we could cure cancer with strength training. I'm like, I still do. I really do. I don't think it's
Yeah.
delusional. Like I really think that like I'm better served than a lot of other my counterparts out there, or working with like Division I athletes or first round draft picks in the NFL. Like, you don't want to mess with Ferrari. I'm like, you don't. Like, you seen their fuel economy. You've seen their actual like that car gets hit by a Mack truck, they're done, right? Like, I would like to make them a little bit more durable and a little bit more fuel efficient. I don't want to change their speed, but yeah, you're right. Like, I want to improve some aspect of it. Like, to say that like I got a Ferrari and I shouldn't do anything with it, let it sit in the garage. Like, I don't think
What's the
that's
point of
doing
getting a
enough.
Ferrari? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, but it's like this. It's like undermining and belittling what we do, or the other end of it, of these young coaches who just get just hanging on to like I would say the problem with young strength conditioning coaches, not a generational thing, but a young thing, is you latch on to ideologies and philosophies prematurely without really looking at. There's a whole great big world out there, and there's a number of ways to skin a cat, and instead of thinking about this model or that thing is better than another, is just trying to be accepting and growing. But when you start to look at this from if you really believe what you do matters, and you say other things are not as impactful, you diminish the value overall of what we do. And from both ends of the spectrum, it's the, hey, I'm going to latch on to one thing and just say that's the only thing to do and everything else sucks. Or I'm going to be dismissive or undermine the value which we do because maybe years and years of just being told like we're not that significant. And then you're kind of in the middle of just like, I got bills, I got kids, I got stuff I got to do. I'm just trying to keep my head above water and survive. Like, never lose sight of what we do matters. Like, it does, like, that's the most important thing of why we do what we do. And we tolerate the low pay, the long hours, maybe the lack thereof respect that we think we should deserve, but that's earned and that's given based off of how much we believe in ourselves. And like I said before, I'm not, I'm not like being like somewhat coy about like, I genuinely believe that someone training with me is the best decision they ever made in their life. And they could go anywhere else, they could do whatever they do. But if they're going to work with me, they're going to get best results bar none. And I genuinely believe that to my core.
I love it, Coach. And that's it for the day. Like, thank you so much, Coach, for jumping on here and dropping all the knowledge, but just keeping it 100% real. Like, it's very hard that you get on here. Some people want to be, like you said, they want to have a question list, pre-ordered an answer. You just spit out the straight facts of what you got going on. So thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you so much for jumping on.
Oh yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Voice.